Hey everybody, what up? Is Scott D here, and it's been a while. I think it's been a couple weeks. Anyways, I'm here to do a card by card for the Night Lords and the latest set, the Extermination set. So let's get back into it. I apologize for the delay in activity. I've been really swamped with work, unfortunately, and that takes away a lot of the time during the work day. And then at the end of the night, it's just been time to get into dailies and challenges and minimum event play. Which, by the way, I think it's been a fun event, but it's quickly becoming dominated by two prominent decks, I think. And then some of the decks that I want to talk changes on. I wanted to do a pack deck about 2 weeks ago, and that's about when they did a change to the Omega order, with the Gamma order, and that kind of broke the whole thing for me. So that made me a little sad and a little down. So we're just gonna do Night Lord card by card. First off, if you haven't already seen it today, it's just the first day, I think, actually, where the full shop has been full of Night Lords cards. So if you haven't had a chance, you've got two Night Lord Warlords to pick up, and you've got the Nostromo Knight Scythes as well as in the shop. You got Terror Campaigns and neutral cards, so that is neutral. That's one of the new neutrals. Also, for those who are unaware, I don't know, I don't really have the information here, but the top 10 lodges in this event actually get the 4th Warlord for the Night Lords. I forget his full name here, and I could probably pull it up on my screen, and if I go into the Discord announcements, but his ability is actually, I think, a really good ability for the Night Lord specifically. So first, let's take a look. I'm sorry. There we go. Let's take a look at the Night Lords. All my cards. Now, I actually picked up the Nostromo, and not the Nostromo. That's from Alien. Nostromo is an actual planet in 40k, and it's the home planet of Conrakers and the Night Lords. And I'm sorry, it's not late, but you would think my mind is just elsewhere, and that's why I'm just kind of rambling right now. But that was the last card I needed, so I actually have a full set of the Night Lords, which is great. I'm not really into the Night Lords. I never really have been. They're probably one of the, I don't know, I mean, they look cool, but in terms of fluff, I've never really enjoyed them in 40k or in 30k. Their whole campaign of terror concept, though, is very interesting in this game. So the Night Lords initially started out in terms of how they prosecuted warfare was better to terrorize or have planets become compliant through fear and intimidation, if possible, rather than full all-out warfare. So, like, for instance, a planet might have populations of millions and billions, and they would take one city and completely decimate it and brutalize it and torture it, every inhabitant, and make that city as an example, and then the rest of the planet would, out of fear, comply, realizing that if they didn't, they would be next in line, and they saw that as a means justifying the ends, or the ends justifying the means, rather. And then gradually, their ranks were full with criminals and scum, and they just kind of fell to the wayside, and were probably one of the first, I would say, to just properly disband to some degree. Kurz is an interesting Primarch character. As far as characters go, I do think he's interesting. I just don't think the Legion itself suits me. But the terror mechanic is something to talk about. So that is unique to the Night Lords. Let's find a unit here with terror. Really quick. So terror, when you're attacking a troop with a lower attack, the lower attack troop does not retaliate. It's kind of like a pseudo sneak attack, only contingent upon the fact that that troop has lower attack. Now, it does not work against warlords. So if you are attacking with terror against a warlord, it doesn't apply, and you'll just do straight damage, and the warlord will damage that troop back. So that's something to keep in mind with some of these troops. But first, let's take a look at the warlords. Right now, there's 3 of them. And then I'll talk about the 4th one, because that will be in the game here in about a week. So Flamemaster Modron, he starts with an extra card like most of the green bordered or the rare warlords do, who has a 2 for 30 health, and his ability is to deal 2 damage. If the target dies, and you give can attack to adjacent units until your next turn. And that's actually not a bad ability. Now his initiative is low, and that does hold him back to some degree. I don't know how that plays yet with the Night Lords in general, but his ability isn't bad. It is contingent upon your opponent either A, playing low health troops or playing troops at all together, and then B, that can attack is actually going to be applicable. Now you can deal the 2 damage to your opponent's warlord, but obviously it's not going to die, and thus you are not giving the can attack to adjacent units. The first event that they were out, Flamemaster Modron was actually a thorn in the side of the Conrad Kurz deck, which is a very aggro deck, but most of his troops in those decks were low health, which were easy pickings for Modron. So not only are you killing a troop, but then you're preventing Kurz from doing any damage. It doesn't work well against an Angron who maybe isn't running any troops, in which case you're just going to do teal damage and you're not going to be able to stop him from attacking. But if he does happen to drop a low health, like one of the World Eater bikes, and you can ping that off, you kill that, and then he can't attack it, it's not bad. It's not quite stun. They can still use passive abilities, obviously, but it's an interesting concept, and there are other cards within the Night Lords that offer the can attack option. Conrad Kurz is the Primarch, and obviously his ability, he's got the high initiative. He's I think the first warlord out of the entire, let me just double check before I speak, but I think he's actually the first warlord, and the only warlord in Extermination with a high initiative. Medium, low, and these are all mediums, including Exodus, who's new. We'll have to talk about Exodus some other day. Yeah, so there you go. So out of three legions, you've got 1 warlord with high initiative joining the fray. So that's actually a really good thing, number 1. Number 2, his ability, is not bad. Late game, or even if you've got, if you're running solo, the ability for 2 energy to drop a unit's troop, or a unit, not just a troop, by attack -1, and that stacks. You can act again, so you can do that. If you've got 6 energy, you can lower a 3 attack troop to 0 attack, and then you can attack it as well. That combos wonderfully with the Mercy and Forgiveness card, which we'll get to in just a second. Madness is his own transformation, and this is where I think that this is nice, actually. This is a nice little touch, because Madness is cost 10 right off the bat, and he becomes the Night Haunter and gains stealth until your next turn. Now you'll note, unlike any Reckonings or Whispers of Chaos, Madness does not have any sort of cost reduction built in. It's simply a 10 energy. It happens, or it can happen. In a way, Conrad Kurz was fated to become mad, or he believed he was fated to become mad, and thus he became mad. There was no denying it. So if you get to that point in the game where you hit the 10 mark, you have the option to go to Madness, whether your opponent likes it or not. That's just the way it is. And again, it's Madness. It's not Whispers of Chaos, because despite his actions and the side of the heresy that he joined, Kurz didn't really do it for chaos. He did it because that was his destiny. That's what he thought as his fate. That just was his path. Now the Night Haunter is what he becomes, and his ability now becomes sneak attack as a built-in, and then he has a passive battle honor, which gains stealth until your next turn if he kills that troop, basically. So hang on here, let me adjust my stand. I got my stand is slipping. Which means if he's got attack 2 on the table, he's got sneak attack 2, he's stealthed, and if your opponent has weak troops on the board, you can start picking those off and keeping him stealthed. and making it hard for your opponent to get to him, and allowing you to drop other things to support him, or just biding your time and going all out. Or if you've got Mercy and Forgiveness, again, that plays into sneak attack. So I like his transformation. I like his madness. I like his abilities all around. I think he's really good. Personally, out of the three warlords currently, and there'll be a fourth one, I think he's the top. And obviously, that's not just because he's a Primarch. I think is all around. He's built for success. The others have got to find a niche. Sevatar, Yago Sevatarian, or Sevatar, has got an interesting build, and it just feels like he's unfinished. There's something lacking there. So first off, he gains +1/+0 while your opponent has no troops. Okay, so he's kind of like a lesser Angron, you might think. But that's not the case. Number two, he's got an ability that gives -2/-0 to an enemy troop until your next turn. Okay, he's like a lesser Conrad, right? Not necessarily the case. First off, his attack bonus is contingent on what your opponent plays, which your opponent can easily play around that. It's never, if your opponent runs a deck with any sort of troops, typically you're always going to have 2 attack on their turn, and you'll have to fight to get 3 attack on your turn. That's trouble. You don't just get that 3. Number one. Number two, that ability, while it seems interesting, and it definitely ties into terror and making your troops nice, he can't act again. So he's simply lowering attack, but not being able to do anything else into the game for your forces. So he doesn't. It's really hard to gauge how to play him or how to utilize him properly. So most of the time, you're simply reacting to what your opponent is playing. I personally don't like that in a warlord. I want my warlord to either dictate how I'm playing, or to throw little kinks and curves into how my opponent's playing. While you might think that the -2/-0 throws a kink and curve into your opponent, again, it's contingent on what your opponent is doing, what they have out there, and it doesn't benefit you. It doesn't do 2 damage. It doesn't reduce them by 2 permanently. It just simply buys you a turn, and if you don't have anything to follow up with that, then what's the point? It just buys you a turn. Now the fourth warlord, which we can't see right now, but his ability is actually better than Sevatar's, and I think it falls just a little under Kurz's, because his ability is, for 2 energy, you give +2/+0 to a troop, and that's a permanent bonus. So it's very good with terror. It's very good with certain Night Lord troops. It's very good with just like gold stones. You can, for 5 energy, you've got a 5 unstoppable. Or some of the stealth troops that we'll take a look here in just a second. That ability is strong. You can build it up if you've got, like, say a Nisr Scout. You can, if your opponent doesn't have any anti-stealth cards, you could, before you attack with him, you could pump him up to a 5/3 or a 7/3, and then attack with him over a couple turns. That's a very powerful ability by itself. Comboed with terror makes for good combinations, and I think he combos. He's easier to play with within the Legion card pool as opposed to Sevatar or Modron. Kurz can utilize some cards in the card pool. He doesn't need them all, but some he definitely does need. Disagreement. Let's take a look at this. Now, this is actually nice. It's a low-cost tactic. It's a 1 energy tactic. Destroy a friendly troop, heal 5 to your warlord. Again, kind of hinting at the little interplays of within the Legion, the little power grabs, and just kind of the rough at the edges nature of the Night Lords, if I were to say it politely. But this has a lot of implications. So you've got to destroy a friendly troop. Okay, well, we've got Sleeper Operative in the game currently, which becomes a friendly troop, which is detrimental to you. So there's a way to get rid of him on your side, as well as give yourself 5 health. Okay, that's one way to look at it. Let's take a look let's take a look, and let's just say if we're playing a game where we want to heal our guy, well, for 3, we're healing for 3, and then he's on the board, and he's only a 2/2. He's not going to do much, but if I pay 1 extra energy, now I've healed for 8 with 2 cards. That's not bad. Or let's just say there's a troop that is on 1 health. I've used it to attack. It did a lot of damage. It's not going to do anything else for me on the opponent's turn. It's probably going to be a target, but you know what? If I can get 5 health out of it, okay, that might be worth spending the 1. It's a good tactic. It doesn't go in every deck. I try to find room for it in my Kurz deck, and I think I need to find a little bit more room because Kurz really needs that health in there. But it's a very good tactic, and it's not to be overlooked. Now, Thandemel squad, we took a look at it just briefly for Terror. These guys are just really cheap, 3/1s with Terror. I don't like them mainly because of that 1 health. It's hard for me to like many troops with 1 health because they don't stick around. He doesn't have stealth. Terror is only good on attacking, not on defending. And on top of that, you throw him out there, unless you've got 2 on your first turn, your opponent's just going to throw your Warlord at that 3/1, take 3 damage, and then prevent you from actually using it against anything that they throw out there. So I pass on those guys. Now, Tigris Exodus is an interesting tactic. It gives stealth and +1/+0 to a friendly Astartes or infantry, and that's not bad. Sometimes that +1/+0 comboed with Terror is just what you need to get higher than your opponent's troops' attack level. So now you can snipe them off with this Tigris Exodus bolter. The stealth part is what I like. If you've already got a troop that has met that threshold, that ceiling of Terror, and you attack and you clear a troop and there's no troops left, then you throw this on them. Now you upped his attack and you've put him in stealth mode, so now you can use him again on your next turn. It can go very nicely with troops with flank. For instance, these Chondriers. It could go well with somebody who comes out with Recon Claw, which we'll take a look at Recon Claw here just shortly. It's good. It's not the best. You have to really know how you want to use it when you're including in your deck. It's good. And it's a cheap cost, which makes it even better sometimes. Now, Trophies of Judgment. It's a neat little picture. It gives -2/-0 to an enemy troop until your turn. It's 1 energy. I'm not a fan of it personally. I pass on it. It's taking Sevatar's ability and making it as a 1 energy tactic. Well, if you're playing Sevatar, you don't need that. If you're playing Kurz, you really don't need that either because he's kind of got that with his ability. Meh. Now, 10th Oath, they've got Terror, and they've got a Rally effect, which gives -2/-0 to an enemy troop this turn. That's not bad if you've got other troops that can take advantage of that -2/-0, or your Warlord who can, if that's enough to drop them to 0 health. But that 2 health, I'd rather see them as a 3/3 or 2/3 even. The 2/2 just feels a little too flimsy to me because that ability doesn't do any damage necessarily. You need more cards to combo with it. Not bad, not great. I think it really just depends on what other cards you've got in your deck for that. A Dirty Fighter is a neat tactic. It's got a close-up picture there of Sevatar, I think, with his helmet off. Your Warlord gains sneak attack this turn and draw a card for 2. Okay, that's not bad. If you happen to have increased your Warlord's attack via either Sevatar's ability or some other cards in the game, there's even a card here within the Legion that increases your Warlord's attack. You could have a sneak attack of 3 or 4. Okay, that's cool. And you draw a card. All right. It's not, the tops, but it's a 2. It's an epic. It's easily affordable to help swing things. Okay. And Mercy and Forgiveness. Dirty Fighter. Okay. All right. I wouldn't include Dirty Fighter in a Kurz deck only for the simple fact that if you are going for that madness and you hit that 10, you're going to have sneak attack anyway, and it becomes a waste if you've transformed to the Night Haunter and then you draw Dirty Fighter. That's only just, you're paying 2 for a card draw at that point. So I'd pass on that in a Kurz deck. Night attack gives stealth to your troops until your next turn. That is cool, and when the card first came out, cards that already had stealth would lose stealth at the end of your turn, and they've changed that since. So, like for instance, Recon Claw comes out, he's stealth, and you have other troops on the board and play Night Attack. When Night Attack expires, Recon Claw should remain stealth. Now, Recon Claw is probably a must, I would say, in all the Night Lord decks. It's a 2. It's epic, so it is a little bit harder for you to get, but its ability helps you capitalize on that terror so much quicker, which is important because you've got to. The Night Lords are not. They're kind of cowardly to some degree, where they don't want their opponent to have a full board. It doesn't bode well if your opponent has a full board. So they've got stealth, and for free, they can give flank to a friendly troop. You start giving flank to troops that coming out with higher attack. They've got the terror built in. They can kill something. It just makes it harder for your opponent, especially some of the higher up cards for the Night Lords. Recon Claws, must have. Tynox Terror Squad, I like them better than the 10th Oath, but you do have to use them on your turn, or your opponent has to attack them, and then that doesn't do anything at that point. But if they can stick around, you can use them better in the fact that you can attack, do 2 damage, drop a enemy by 2, not just a troop, an enemy, okay, which includes your opponent's warlord, which makes your opponent's warlord, unless it's Angron, 0 attack, and then follow up with everything else that you've got on the board, and they won't take any damage. That's really good. I like that. It's hard to keep these guys around, but they're good. Now, Curse of Foresight, again, another close-up here of Kurz, good art. You draw 3 cards, and for every tactic drawn, deal 1 damage to your warlord. If your deck ratio is more troops than tactics, I think if you can squeeze one of these in, it's not a bad thing, because you don't want to run out of support for your Night Lords. Your Warlords are contingent kind of on having those troop supports. It's hard to squeeze it in there. If you have to choose between an Abandoned Supplies or Leviticus, Lectitio Divinatus, or Curse of Foresight, drawing 3 cards and not having your opponent draw a card, potentially taking damage, but I'm not giving my opponent an advantage, I would probably go with this over that. It is a little bit more costly, but you know what you have in your deck. You don't know what you're giving your opponent, so keep that in mind. Now, Conjurator, these guys already have flank. They're a 3/2, which means for a 3-drop, they can conceivably use that flank and that terror on most 3-drops in the game that are played outside of the Emperor's Children. The Emperor's Children, you need something to give them a little bit more edge. You need a 4 attack to really bust through the Emperor's Children. But it's good. The 2 health makes it weak, and that's why you without having flank or terror utilized, this is just a 3. This is kind of like a cheaper, more less useful Goldstone, but they're not bad. I don't like the artwork though. Mercy and Forgiveness is kind of key for Kurz. I mean, if you don't have it, if you have Kurz and you don't have Mercy and Forgiveness, you can certainly play without it. But if you can get this on him early as possible, and especially once you go into Madness, the fact that you can ramp out the damage combined with his ability, meaning, okay, I can drop whether it's in my opponent's warlord or a troop 2 0 attack, and then follow it up with 4 attack from my own without taking any damage. That's a lot of pressure. And then also, if he's transformed into the Night Haunter, he now has sneak attack for 4 that can benefit him with a stealth. It makes it very hard for your opponent to kill him, and as well as doing decent amount of damage. Now, the thing with that is you've got Bloodthirst, so you can act twice per turn, twice attacks, okay, but that you're taking damage. You've got to heal. So, for Sevatar, for Kurz, keeping in mind cards like Disagreement and other healing cards in your deck are really kind of important, because if you've got it, Bloodthirst, but you're not able to utilize it because you don't have the health, you're not doing yourself any favors. Now, Mercy and Forgiveness on Sevatar suddenly does open up some range with his ability and himself, but again, that's contingent upon what your opponent has got out there. That's contingent upon your opponent not having troops out there. It's a good card to have, though. If you see it in the shop, I would probably say Mercy and Forgiveness. Probably ranks right in the middle as far as must-haves. It doesn't need to go in a modern deck necessarily, but it probably can find a space in just about any other Night Lord deck. Now, Rad Urzon, these guys are common, I think, the de-evolution of the Tynok Terror Squad, but their ability can be devastating. If they survive, rather than attacking for 1 energy, you can give Can Attack to an enemy until your next turn. And that is debilitating. If you can park these guys behind a front line against Angron and they can survive for 1 turn, you can start stopping him from doing anything. Or let's say it's against a Kurz deck, or even a Garrow deck. Oh man, Garrow not being able to attack? Are you kidding me? That's the whole point. He can heal, but if he can't do anything else, and generally playing low attack troops to support him, meaning they're vulnerable to terror, Rad Urzon is very good. I like him. You have to know that that's what you're going for within the deck itself if you're going to utilize them that way. But if they can stick around, being able to stop something from attacking is really annoying to the opponent, but it also helps build up the control of the board for yourself. It's, again, not a stun, but if you're utilizing it on those attack troops, it's just as good. Now, Rule of Fear, I like this. I try to put 2 in every deck. That might be overkill because we're starting to see more decks with 3 troops or 3 attack troops, but this destroys all enemy troops with 2 or less attack. Now, you can make that work really easy with Conrad Kurz. It costs you a little bit more energy, but for 7 energy, using his ability twice, you could drop 2 troops to 2 attack and then kill both of them. Or if you just have Rule of Fear and Kurz is chosen, you can kind of do that for 10, and that's across the board. That's everybody. That's even more devastating, really, if you ask me. It kills Jubaka. It kills Jubaka. It kills, Recon Claw, all the little wonderful little stealthy guys from the Raven Guard, a lot of the Imperial Army troops, just gone. It kills the mortar carriers, gone. It doesn't matter how much health they're just gone. So I like it, and that's why I try to get 2 in, and it's cheap, it's easy, and it's a destroy all. That's huge. Terror Tactics is kind of, and like if you don't have Rule of Fear, I guess you'd probably find a way to put in Terror Tactics. And I like the artwork. I think the artwork on this one is cool. It gives -2/-0 to enemy troops until your next turn. But if you've got enough of the Night Lord cards, that's kind of redundant. There's a lot of other cards that are already going to do that. I've seen it in the event decks, and I don't think I've actually seen it played in normal games. I think there's just better options at that point. Now, here's where we start to see some more cards that are contingent upon what your opponent is doing. So, Unstoppable, Tyrell Assault Squad, Rally. If your opponent has no troops, gain fast. Now, out of the gate, that sounds really good. That sounds easy to do. It actually is harder to do than you think. I don't know why, but every time I include these guys in my decks, I don't ever get the fast. And I'll say this, also, these guys are, for me, for some reason, I always confuse them with their counterparts, the Tenebr Talon. The artwork is very similar. Their cost and stats are different, but I always like, oh yeah, he's got no troops, and then I put down the one that I have to have no troops. Oh, he's got troops, I'll put down the one that, no, I always get that mixed up. I should probably just spend more time reading my cards. Is really what I should be doing. So they can be fast. They're unstoppable and they can be fast. But if your opponent has troops out, then they're just a 3/3 unstoppable, and that's it. And it's really easy for your opponent, especially knowing if they're Night Lords. Your opponent, they should try to have some troops on the table to kind of break that. Now, Kurlan is the same thing. The difference is his does damage. So if your opponent has no troops, deal 2 damage to the Amber Warlord, and he's a 4/2. I like that early on in the game. Late on in the game, it's hard to pull off, but early on in the game, your opponent has no troops. So not only am I doing 2 damage, but now I've got a 4 attack sitting there to either kill the troop that your opponent drops, or your opponent's Warlord is going to eat 6 from this guy for 3 damage or for 3 cost. So they're good, but you've got to have them in your opening hand basically to really gain advantage of that. Talent for Murder. This tactic actually can be very, very annoying. It's a costly one. It's a cost of 4. I think it should be 3, but it's a common, so okay, fine. First off, it changes the health of a troop to 1. Second off, it gives it can't attack until your next turn. It has a lot of implications. It works with Marowin, Marowkin rather, and making them easy to use with his ability. It works with Kurz in his madness state, because it doesn't matter how beefy that front line is. I just dropped it to 1 health and I used my sneak attack, and now I'm stealthed. It works against, let's say you've got some massive, Ogren frontline guy. Okay, well, I'll drop him to 1 health and he can't attack, so now I don't have to worry about it. Oh, your mercenaries, okay, they're 15-12, now they're 15-1, and I throw a little cheap chintzy dude at them and they're gone. It has a lot of versatility, a lot of implications. I always try to find room for 1. It's hard. It depends on the rest of the cards you've got in the deck, but it's really good. It's a good tactic. Now, Deep Strike, I like the idea. I like the flavor of the fluff. Giving flank to your troops in your hand, I just find it harder to do for some reason with the Night Lords. And I don't know if that's because this is a cost 4, and by turn 3 or 4, you've put some troops on the board, or if it's just when it's drawn. It seems like it's harder to do, but it's a good ability. I mean, being able to give flank to any of your troops is great. However, if you've got 2 recon claws in your deck and you start opening hand with them on board, then that's just as good, if not better, because then you've got that Deep Strike right away. You don't have to wait a turn. Now, Ka Promote, I like this as a structure, first off. So it can't attack. It's a 3/4. It's easy, it's flimsy, but it's not a vehicle, which means it's not susceptible to crack grenades. And now with the changes to Ambassador Melgador, it can't be bounced to your hand. Okay, so that's good. After an enemy attacks, deal 2 damage to a random enemy. That's way better than you think, especially if this can end up behind a frontline unit, because it's kind of like a Havoc Squad, except instead of dealing 2 damage to whatever's attacking, it's just to a random. But if there's only your opponent's Warlord, then your opponent's Warlord is taking 2 damage. If it's a troop that kills itself, then that 2 damage is going to some other troop. It's a good ability, and if you can keep it protected, that 2 damage can shut your opponent down from A, wanting to attack, and B, being able to mount any creditable offensive. They've got to deal with this before they can deal with anything else that you've got on the table. It's unique in that it doesn't seem to fit or jive well with the other cards and the terror concept and the terror theme of the Night Lords. But if you have Copper Mode in a late game Kurz or Flame Master Modron, it has a lot of potential to really just kind of throw your opponent off. So I do like those. The Night Raptors, now these guys I like. They're easier to use. They're rally, gain stealth into your next turn, and they're unstoppable. So while not fast, they almost guarantee that you're going to get that 4 to go out in your next turn. that was until Joker Company. Joker Company now is out there. Their possibility, if you're dropping Night Raptors, your opponent drops Joker Company, your Night Raptors are gone. And if you're playing around the concept of having stealth troops in your Night Lords, it's not going to be a fun game for you at that point. But that's just one card. Obviously, there's a lot of other ways to counter stealth. I think for a 4 cost for what they do, I think they're a decent card to consider, and they're common. So if you have access to them, don't feel bad about putting them in your deck. Speaking of not feeling bad about this, the Nostrum and Chainglaive, +2/+0 and cleave 2 to a friendly troop. Now it's costly. It's a costly tactic, but that helps you mount that offensive, and that offensive can be powerful. You just turned, for instance, this 4/3 into a 6 cleave 2. It's better on a terror troop. For instance, if you dropped, and then we're going with these cheap terror guys, but let's just say you dropped Condrayer, and then you followed it up with that. Now that's that's 7 energy on this low troop. That's a bad example, but let's just say you did that. Now he becomes a 5/2 with cleave and flank and terror, so he can come out, most likely use terror to destroy a troop and deal 2 damage to adjacent units, which can include your opponent's warlord. And then on top of that, he's a 5 that your opponent has got to deal with. They've either got to take the face strike or find some other way to get rid of him. I like to have these on a more beefy or like a stealth unit or something like that, but if you can put that on a unit with terror, it's really good. So Nostromo, this is just out in the shop today. I got it because I needed it for the collection. It was the last one I had. The Night Lord's Homeworld. Give can attack to enemy troops until your next turn and draw a card. Now, it's a situational card. Number 1. If your opponent has no troops on the board, this is just drawing you a card. It's not going to do anything else because it doesn't stop your opponent's warlord from attacking just their troops. Number 2, you have to find it in your deck. You have to make room for it, and it doesn't fit as well as you would think. You might be able to make it work in a Curse deck. I don't think it would work as well in a Sevatar deck. Modern might make it work if you're just putting a bunch of can attack stuff in your deck, but even then, I don't know. I'd rather have troops on the board. So I haven't seen the deck that like really capitalizes on it. It's not bad, but it's not great. If you don't need it, I wouldn't suggest buying it. I'd suggest saving your gems. I only picked it up because I needed it. Secret Talent, so stealth. After attacking the enemy warlord, gain stealth. This is a common. The art's not bad. What's nice about this is these guys are meant to attack the warlord, and if they're able to, they're going to do 3, then they're going to be stealth, and then they can do 3 again. Your opponent has got 2 turns to break that stealth, their first stealth and then their second stealth, but you've also got 2 turns to up these guys' attack with a Chainglaive or a Mechindrite or something like that. But then also on top of that, you can also have a variety of ways to reduce your opponent warlord's attack with the Night Lords. So maybe that 3/4 stays at a 3/4. And stays at a 3/4, and stays at a 3/4, and stays at a 3/4 until they have some way to break the stealth and get rid of it. This is saying that you've dropped your opponent's warlord to 0 attack each time before you use these guys. Even if you attack them, if you drop your opponent's warlord's attack by 1, they become a 3/3, then they become a 3/2, then they become a 3/1. So you've used them now 3 to 4 times. They have a lot of potential. Obviously, that's for your opponent's warlord. If you have a 3/4 on the table, you don't want to have to throw these guys out against your opponent's troops, to counterplay. You want these to be your means, but it's very possible. It's very possible to do. They've got potential if you utilize them right, especially with the negative to attacks. Now, Tenebrae Talon, I think these guys are easier to utilize properly. Unstoppable, rally. If you have no other troops, gain fast. That's good. You have to remember that when you put these guys out first. The problem with that is, and it is a problem, is that you have to have no other troops, which means if you're playing these guys, you might have one more troop to play with them if it's late game, or they are just the one troop that you're putting out there. And with the 4-3 health, I mean, they might just be a one-time thing, and then they're just a silver bullet, and then at that point, is it better just to use a seek and destroy tactic for 2 energy? I don't know. I like them better than the 3 cost that they counter, because you can control having troops or not having troops. But you just gotta know when to play them, and you gotta know how to play them, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Ender Shack, now this guy, I would probably rank him as a number 2 must-have legendary. Oh geez, where do you start? I mean, first off, he's a good cost. He's a 5. He's a 4/5, comes out with stealth, and he has terror. Okay, but he gains +2/+0 when an enemy dies. If you have stuff on the table, or if your opponent has stuff on the table, I say table, it's a board, when he comes out and then you kill one of their troops, he instantly becomes a 6/5 stealth. And then you do it again on your turn before you attack with him, and now he's an 8/5 stealth. I think it was either the first or second event that the Night Lords were out, and there was like almost no anti-stealth built into any of the event decks that were being used. And it was not uncommon to see Ender Shack get up to an 18-0 or an 18-5 before somebody used, like, because if your opponent had no way to break his stealth, so you just kept upping his attack until it was time to, okay, now I'm just going to win the game with this. That's not going to happen in ladder necessarily. There's a lot of anti-stealth out there. There's a lot of random damage, other things to kind of, break that. But it's very easy to see Ender Shack up to a 9/5 or an 11/5 if he can really get going. And again, use this with the Exodus, 1 energy after he attacks the first time. Now let's say he's a 6/5, then he's an 8/5. Then I throw on the Exodus. Now he's a 9/5, and he's stealthed again. Very good, very good. He's a good board controller, because keep in mind that's terror, works on the troops, doesn't work on the warlord. So you can just keep that board clear. And then if you've got a big enough attack, that you want to take it against your opponent's warlord, go for it. But I wouldn't do that right away. I'd really use him on the troops. Now headsmen, these guys are just straightforward. 5/4, terror for 5. If I had to choose between the 5 troops, Ender Shack is my first, and Support Talon would be my next one. That's just me. A punitive action. I like the ability of this. I don't like the cost. I think the cost should be reduced to a 4, maybe even a 3. 4. Deal 1 damage to all enemies for each friendly unit in play, which includes your warlord. So if you've got 3 guys on the board, you're dealing 3 damage to all enemies in play. But with the Night Lords, and most legions really, it's hard to keep troops on the board for that long to properly execute with the 5 cost, let alone being able to do, for 1 to 2 extra damage. That can make and break it sometimes, but I wouldn't include it in the decks. I've seen it in event decks, and it's a little bit more useful and easy to execute in event decks, but I wouldn't include it in a ladder deck. Now, Support Talon, these guys have got a lower attack, 3/5. They don't have terror, but their ability is just so much better. Deal 2 damage to an enemy and stun it. It doesn't seem to jive with the terror concept, but if you can't kill it, you can damage it and stun it, or you can stop it from attacking with, with the variety, whether Nostromo or Modron or what were these guys again here? The Rad Urzon. You can really make your opponent's units not useful at all. Now, this is an enemy, not a troop, so that can also affect your opponent's warlord. So Angron does not like this. Vibius Talon, unstoppable flank. They're not bad, 5/4, but they're flanking for 5, so they can really dish out some mega damage to a unit. But I would really wish that they were fast, as opposed to the flank is just like with that 5, and they don't have terror. So keep that in mind. These guys don't have terror, so they're just going to do the damage. It's like the stuff that needs terror doesn't have it, and the stuff that can't properly utilize terror has terror. this is where you start to see kind of the disjoint dynamic of the Legion, I guess. And that's kind of what I was holding off on doing a card by card for part of that reason, because also I was hoping there'll be some changes made to the Legion, but there hasn't been. There probably won't be for a little bit, but when they do, it'll be needed. Now these guys here, these guys are a 6/3 unstoppable terror. Okay, they've got terror, but they don't have flank, and they're a cost of a 6. Honestly though, if I had to choose between the 6s, I think Night Scythe and the Reaper of Kaldrak are just the better ways to go. And yes, we're talking epics here, but these guys have terror. They have 1 extra health, and they've got a rally destroy a troop with 2 or less attack. That's a built-in destroy. Now, the problem with that is if the only thing that has 2 or less on the board is your troop, you have no choice. You have to destroy it. So you can't use Night Scythes with Recon Claw if Recon Claw is the only thing that's on the board with a 2 or less attack. Generally, Night Scythes can come in. They can get rid of Jubok. They can get rid of, like, if your opponent has bounce with the Melgator, he's now a viable target. But they're also just as good on those mortar carriers, or anything that you like. It's turn 8. You can drop a 3 health or 3 attack with Curs, and now there are 2, and then you bring out Night Scythes, and then for free you use Recon Claw to get them flank, and then they also take out 5 attack or less. Thinking Emperor's Children, they're Odovacar, or better yet, Night Scythes coming out and destroying a Hall of Rights on their entrance. That's pretty nice. I like that. So they're harder to utilize than you think, but they can really swing things when they come out. Now the Reaper of Kaldrak, it's a shame that he's a vehicle because he is susceptible to the crack grenade. But with Melgator being changed, he can't be bounced. He has terror, and his rally is can't attack to an enemy until your next turn, which can be really strong if the only enemy that's on the board is your opponent's warlord. Can just be just as useful if your opponent has got a big beefy unit that they want to use, an Argus Brond, or Malgahurst or something like that. Okay, well now you can't attack, and now I've got a 5/6 on the board. What are you gonna do about it? Oh, and on my next turn, I'm gonna follow it up with Curse's Chosen. These guys, man, these rank it right up there with Endra's Sheik. You wouldn't think it. They're a 7 cost. That's really costly. And they're a 7/5. Okay, yeah. And they're Astartes, so they're susceptible to things that affect infantry and troops. Okay. But they've got terror, and enemy troops have -2, -0. And that's all enemy troops all the time. So even if your opponent brings out, a Goldstone to try to get rid of these guys, their Goldstone just drops to a 1/2 fast. Oh, you've got the Scimitar jet bikes. Okay, it comes out, and now it's a 2/2. Okay, it's going to take multiple things to get rid of these guys. And the fact that they've got that 7 attack means that your opponent's warlord is most likely not going to want to be the one to break that. Very powerful. They can really swing the game. You don't want to bring them out too early, but man, they're just devastating. And something else to note, and this is really important, and one reason why I think the Salamanders have been changed to some degree, they've made some adjustments with the attack. Curse's Chosen makes all of these 2 attack guys, this guy, who has sacrifice, by the way, who's contingent on attacking, this guy, who's contingent on attacking, this guy, you can't see me pointing, so let me point at what I'm pointing, drops all of them to attack 0, which means that they can't attack at all, so they can't even be used for their purpose of sacrifice and do that extra damage. Then they're just sitting ducks. And he's got terror on top of that, so he can just pick them off at his leisure. It's brutal. It does a lot more damage to the Salamanders, and the Salamanders have had some changes made to them, which make them a little bit more helpful, but they can still get rolled over once Curse's Chosen comes out. And I mean, that's hard pressed to counter if you don't have enough stuff on the board to get rid of that 5, or you don't have something in your hand that destroys a troop or does direct damage. Spectre of Judgment. Now this is costly. This is a very costly destroy. This is their the Night Lords have a destroy all. That's kind of contingent, and they've also got just a straight destroy a troop. Deals 2 damage to adjacent units though. So very interesting. Keep a note. Spectre of Death is basically, nope, I'm not looking at, I should be looking at the Imperial, not the Mechanicum. It is basically a Legion specific melt-a-bomb, and rather than a destroy a vehicle or structure, it's destroy a troop, so it's anything. I like it. I don't have 2 in a deck. I usually just run 1 because of the cost, but it gets rid of it and it deals 2 damage to adjacent units. What's not to like? What's not to like? Now, Boss Predator, they're costly as well, but their rally deal 3 damage, and then they're a 7/5 Predator on the field. Okay, for a common, like if you're looking for something to kind of put that extra pressure on your opponent, they're not a bad card to go with. I would generally squeeze them out over time. Like if you've got Curse's Chosen, I would go with Curse's Chosen over Vosk Predator. I just would. That's just, you may not be doing the instant damage right away, but you are shutting your opponent's board down, and that's just as good. Antromentar, now these guys are worth noting because number 1, yes, they're costly. All right, that sucks. But 6/7, okay, that's good. If your warlord has +1/+0, there's no contingent on that. It doesn't matter. He doesn't have to be adjacent to your warlord. It doesn't have to do. It just gives your opponent, your warlord, +1/+0. So your Sevatar could become a 4 attack. Your Kurz could become a 3 attack. Oh, and your Kurz, who has sneak attack and he has mercy and forgiveness, now he has a sneak attack of 3, so he's a 6. He can do 6 damage and gain stealth. Okay. On top of that, if you have no other troops, gain frontline. So these guys are a great closer for Kurz in that regard, because basically your Kurz runs solo. He's in the shadows. He's gone to madness. He's got his mercy and forgiveness. Your opponent thinks you've got him cornered. Then you bust out Antromentar. You've got a giant, beefy frontline guy in front of him, and then you've just buffed up Kurz to go back into stealth mode to avoid any sort of direct damage. I don't know if you'd put 2 in a deck, maybe a 1, and just kind of hold on to it until you need to hit that mode, or you need something for a closer, but they're not bad. These guys are considerably better. They have automatically frontline. They're not contingent on that. And while they have less attack initially, they have decent health. They're a vehicle, not a troop, so again, can't be bounced by Ambassador Malgator now. That makes a big difference. And then on top of that, after attacking, gain +2/+0. So they've got terror, but even if they're attacking your opponent's warlord, they're 5, now they're 7, now they're 9. These guys can ramp up fast, and that's a frontline troop. Your opponent has to deal with that before it can get to anything else. So if you have the choice, you probably would want to go with Vacarin over Antromentar. But if you don't, I don't think Antromentar is a bad decision either. Now the Raven is the Night Lord's closer card, and I've seen some debate. I don't understand why there's a debate. Now the Raven is an interesting character. He's actually, I believe, a Raven Guard who defected or joined the Night Lords at some point prior to the Drop Site Massacre. He's an 8/8 fast, so he's kind of like a Vengeful Spirit, except he's a troop. So yes, if your opponent has a front line on the board, he's not going to be able to be as effective and take out your opponent's warlord. But if they don't, he's not only doing 8 damage to your opponent's warlord, but if that doesn't kill your opponent's warlord, they now have an 8 attack troop on the board that they've got to deal with. Or let's say they've got a big beefy thing that they've got and you want to get rid of it. Okay, well, you get rid of it and maybe you still have some health left over on the Raven. He's the closer. In terms of, with any closing card, Vengeful Spirit, Pride of the Emperor, the Raven, Cades for the Raven Guard, I put those guys as the number one legendaries to get. Yes, he's a 9 cost. He's the closer. If you're at that late state in the game, you want that instant satisfaction to win. Every legion has got the potential in a card or cards to do that. You don't want to be playing without that in your deck. So if you see the Raven in the shop, he's not in the shop tonight, but the next time the Night Lords are in the shop, hopefully the Raven's one of them. If you don't have him, pick him up. He's the number 1 must. I put him as the number 1. And then number 2, probably it's a really coin toss between coin toss, not coin toss. Coin toss between Ender's Sheik and Curse's Chosen. And then Mercy and Forgiveness. And then Nostromo. That's how I would rank the legendaries. Obviously, the Primarch is great, but you can't get Primarch in the shop. So now, Poggerbot, adjacent units have +2/+0. This is another way to increase your Warlord's attack. It is costly. It is a vehicle. It doesn't have front line. It's probably not going to see much play in ladder, but you might see it in some events. But that's not just your Warlord, that's other things that might have terror, that might have flank, that might come in after that. It's not bad. It's actually a really good instant value 10 drop. And I prefer to see some sort of instant value on those expensive things, because otherwise they're too easily disposed. So overall, that's the Night Lords. That's what their card pool looks like. Some things mix well better than others. Some things mix with certain warlords better than others. It's hard to find their spot, though. It really is, because you might swing one way, and then late game you wish that you had the stuff that you had earlier, and the stuff that you had earlier you don't want. It's really kind of a toss-up, and sometimes it's just kind of contingent on what your opponent's playing. Are they giving you troops to slaughter to go with terror, or to be shadowed with madness? Are they not? And then what are you playing with if they're not feeding you stuff to terrorize? What do you do? You'll note that they really don't have any damaging tactics. They've got some decent destroy tactics in some ways to reduce health or attack, but they don't have any damaging tactics. You're utilizing the neutral cards for that. And their cards, a lot of their cards are really contingent on what your opponent has on the board. And that's hard. That's hard to play. It's easy to build a deck, but it's hard to play a deck that's contingent on what your opponent plays. Because if your opponent plays great, and they know what you've got because they see Night Lords and they know the cards that Night Lords have, they can play around you, number one. Number two, if they didn't build a great deck, but they also don't do anything for you, then you have to wait until they've made the move that allows you to make your move, as opposed to, well, you didn't do A, so I'm going to go ahead and do A. Night Lords are, you didn't do A, so I can't do my A. I now have to use my B or C. Whereas most legions, even the neutrals, if you don't do your thing, I can still do my thing. That's pretty much the way the game works, except for the Night Lords. Not every card, but some of their cards, and definitely some of their abilities are really kind of contingent on that, and that makes it hard to build a Night Lords deck. And I don't know, I mean, I've just been playing Alfarius all season. This month as my ladder deck, he's my exclusive, and I feel pretty good, but I've not run across any Night Lords in Terra, aside from bots, and those don't count. So I don't know if they're seeing a lot of play. Maybe they're getting play at lower levels. I know there's a lot of fans out there in the Night Lords, but I don't know how well they're getting played, or if people are kind of coming across with the same experience as I am. I would like to see some changes made to them, some increases in some stats, or some reduction in some costs. I think Terra as a mechanic is okay. It's neat, it's nifty, and there's plenty of ways for it to be built on and improved, and it certainly can be frustrating, as frustrating as sneak attack. So it's not while it is a cheaper version of sneak attack, it's just as good when you utilize it right. It's just they need something to utilize more, I think, and I think that's what's holding them back. They've got the potential, and who knows, maybe you got some ideas as far as how to utilize these guys properly. But right now, just if you slap together just Night Lord stuff, it's not going to run as well. You need Night Lords, you need some neutrals, and you need some direct damage, and depending on who you're running, you need healing. If you're doing Kurz and maybe even Sevatar, you need ample healing. So they're not as clear-cut and straightforward as some other legions are. And maybe that's for you. That's okay. So anyways, I've gone on long enough about the Night Lords. Free crate. What you got? What you got, free crate? Junk. But it's free. Free junk. 8 gold. That's actually pretty good for a free crate, I think. Usually it's like 4. I'll take it. But that's it. That's what I've got. And I hope to get out there and do another video this weekend. Every time I say I'm going to do a deck video, then they do some sort of errata to whatever cards I'm using, and then it's not as fun to do. But I've got decks. I've got a deck for everybody who I've got. The only warlord I'm missing is Angron, and I need deck slots so I can pimp out some Night Lord decks, because, you know, I need that. I could do a Barb and Folk. I might just do a Garrow for new players. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. I'm going to do something, though. I'm really aiming to be productive and get a couple more videos out this weekend. Maybe I'll put up a little, salty video talking about the sadness of Omega Order being overturned, because let me tell you, Gamma Order rather. I was really disappointed that they changed that, but that's a whole different diatribe. Anyways, that's it for me. That's out. I'm out. I'm gonna take care of it for the night. Thank you for watching. I hope the information was useful to you. If you know somebody who's joining the game or who wants to know about the Night Lord card pool, please refer them to the video. And hope to get more content out soon. And until then, keep playing Legions. Talk to you later. All right, bye.